pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Meeting's now in order. Eduardo.
All right, good morning, everybody. So let's start with roll call. Mayor Leeser.
Here.
Senator Blanco. Representative Chris Canales. Mayor Ramon Cano. Senator Joseph Cervantes. Mayor Rudy Cruz. Mayor-elect. Mayor Miguel Chacon. Aaron Chavarria. Anthony De Kaiser. Representative Mary Gonzalez. Representative Cassandra Hernandez. Yvette Hernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Ileana Holguin.
Present.
City Manager Dion Mack. Representative Willie Madrid. Representative Walter Miller. Representative Joe Moody. Representative Eddie Morales. Mo Movet.
That's first than the usual.
Mayor Diana Murillo. Representative Claudia Ordaz. Representative Lina Ortega. Norma Palacios. Mayor Javier Perea. Mayor Rachel Quintana. Tony Nevares. Representative Isabel Salcido. Judge Ricardo Samaniego.
Yes, here. Next to me.
Mayor Anthony Turner. And Tomas Trevino.
Here, yes.
All right. So we do have quorum. Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to item number 1.
Before that, Marisol, do we have people signed up for open comment
We have for item 6.
for item 6? All right, so then moving on to item number 1, just discussion and action to consider approval of the minutes of the October 18, 2024 TPB meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Item 2 is consider accepting the draft vision statement and goals for the Regional Mobility Strategy, RMS 2052 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP. So before I turn it over to Robbie Guthert from WSPR Consultant Team, let me just set the stage. As you know, we are in the process of developing our new long-range plan. Being in the non-attainment area, we have to do that every 4 years. And the clock begins the day that the conformity is approved for the current plan. That happened in November of 2022. So that's when the 4 o'clock begins for the new plan and to have the conformity for that plan approved. So November of 26 is the drop dead deadline. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robbie. He'll give some background in general of the process, and then move on specifically to where we are today, which is with the vision and the goals for our plan. So Robbie, I see you there. Take it over.
Yes. Hey everyone. Let me trying to share my screen. Can you all hear me okay and see my screen?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, awesome. Well, hey everyone. Again, my name is Robbie Guthart. I'm a transportation planner at WSP, and I'm one of the planners helping support the MPO in preparing this MTP update for the RMS 2052. So today I'll just kind of go over an overview of what the MTP is, kind of as a kickoff, and then talk about the goals and objectives and the vision statement that we've come up with and working with MPO and the TPAC. So Eduardo mostly just went over this, but the planning horizon for the MTP is typically about 20 years or more. Ours is going to 2052. It's updated every 4 years. And the purpose of the MTP is really to establish the long-term transportation policy agenda for the region. It outlines priorities for transportation, identifies transportation projects to meet transportation goals, what we'll talk about in just a moment, over that plan horizon, all while remaining fiscally constrained. So that just means that there's always more needs and more projects that are needed for the region. However, we just make sure that we program the priorities that we know that there are revenues and funds for. And then at the bottom here, the objective for today is to request your approval of the draft goals and vision so that we can present them at an open house that we're having in January. Here's a snapshot of the project schedule. There's a lot on screen, but I'll just kind of go over some of the highlights. So this fall and winter in the upper left is where we're really at right now. So just really in that kickoff stage where we're looking at existing conditions of the transportation system in the region itself. And we're going through this visioning, developing this vision statement and the goals, which I'll go through in a moment. And we're also starting to look at the congestion management process, which is a network layer that for the region, we want to focus congestion mitigation measures on. So we have had an MPO visioning workshop with the MPO staff this fall. Also met with the TPAC to go over these draft goals and vision statements. We will have, like I mentioned, a public meeting in January, and then throughout the schedule, you'll see here in yellow, these are the community and stakeholder engagement steps that we have planned out. There's quite a few touch points with the TPAC and with you all, the TPC. And then before I forget to mention, we have this first public meeting in January, and then we'll have another one returning to the public in winter of 2025 to 2026. So like I touched on, we did have a visioning workshop with the MPO staff to review and determine a draft vision statement for this MTP update. And then after that, we met with the TPAC and went over this draft vision statement and made some slight adjustments based off some of their comments and suggestions. So where we landed and where we're at with this draft vision statement is a seamless and reliable multimodal network which enables regional and multi-jurisdictional connectivity, promotes quality of life, equity, safe, user-friendly streets, and economic well-being, and preserves the human environment. Statement that we formulated for this MTP update, the RMS 2052. Moving on to draft goals. So I have them up here on screen. These are the goals themselves, but I'll just go, I think that's from, yeah, I'll read the goal description themselves because it gives a little bit more context. So for safety, increase safety of the regional transportation system for all users, regardless of the mode of travel. Provide an efficient transportation system that maintains travel time reliability and reduces congestion. For economic development, so promoting economic development by offering multimodal transportation options between jobs, educational opportunities, resources, markets, and travel destinations. Integrate land use and transportation planning by promoting consistency between transportation improvements, planned growth, and economic development growth. Expand the connectivity and integration of the transportation system across and between modes of people and freight. Maintain and conserve assets of the existing transportation system within a state of good repair. And improve resiliency of the transportation system against extreme events, protect and enhance the environment, reduce or mitigate stormwater impacts, improve quality of life, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and promote energy conservation, promote equitable access to safe and affordable mobility options while reducing transportation-related disparities, adverse community impacts, and health effects. Invest in innovations and technologies to enhance the transportation system and support and increase quality of life for the region. And finally, but last but not least, support sustainable and responsible financing options to deliver and implement the right transportation projects. For the 10 draft goals that we've come up with, and again, these were kind of came up with, they're comprehensive. They cover federal regulations and guidelines for what an MTP should cover. We also took into consideration what the goals were through past MTPs, so there's consistency carrying over from the current MTP into this one. And we also reviewed these with the MPO staff at the visioning workshop and also with the TPAC at our presentation and workshop with them just last week.
Bless you.
As for our next steps, I keep touching on this, but we do have a public open house scheduled for January 15th, starting at 5:30, ending around 7 at Burgess High School. We'll be in the Black Box Theater. And this public meeting will provide an opportunity for the public to see some exhibits of what some of the data we're analyzing for existing conditions, and then have some activities so that the public can provide some comments on their transportation needs and even some comments on these goals and this vision statement that we've developed. Eduardo, I think that's the end of my presentation.
Anybody have anything?
So just to complement what Robbie said. So first of all, we call these draft because, again, we have to go out to the public and all that and gather input. But in general terms, you see these 10 goals are pretty obvious. I mean, how can you say no to them, right? It's a good combination of congestion relief, incorporating some of the newer concepts that are so important, like sustainability and equity, and into the planning process. But with that, we wanted to bring it to you all so that you, first of all, you understand and you know that we are heavy into the process of developing our new long-range plan. It's one of our core activities, one of the most important processes that the MPO is responsible for, working together with all of our partners here in the region, the DOTs, the municipalities, and also in very strong coordination with federal and state agencies. So with that,
Miller?
And it may be by design, but it seemed that this is very generic. There's not much specificity about where we are. There's no mention of the border. There's no mention. I don't know if that's to come later, or if this is just the starting point to where we get there. But this seemed very generic.
Right. Yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, these are very broad, the vision statement and goals. We're going to break it down more into more specific objectives that really go hand in hand with more, specific performance measures that we use, so that then when we start getting into the project selection, project identification process, and then later on in project selection process, for the MTP, and later on, of course, for the TIP. But yeah, at this point, we are pretty.
By design.
Yes, exactly. Robbie, do you want to add to that?
Hernandez has a question
Oh,
also.
sorry.
I think both Hernandezes have a question.
Sure, I was just gonna ask, does this plan replace any of the other ones?
Yeah.
So this will be the overarching plan for all of.
Correct. So there can only be one long-range plan at a time, right? And in the same way that there's only one formal TIP at a time, right? So, but while we develop it, there's overlap and gets more complicated, like where we're in right now with amending the plan. So in some of the action items that you see, we amend the plan, then we amend the amended plan, so that when the amended plan is approved, that one becomes the official one. So
what is the public engagement process as it relates to the board itself? Are you all going to be interviewing board members to ask them, what their priorities are for their business?
I don't think we were looking at specific or individual interviews, but, we are always open. If somebody wants to have schedule a one-on-one, we're more than happy to do that. Not just for this phase, but throughout any
Well,
phases.
that's the purpose of the public meetings, to get everyone.
Yeah, right.
So,
Exactly right.
I was just wondering, I'm not making a demand or request here. The other feedback I'd like to provide related to the plan itself is the MPO's visioning lens, the priority process, and then what is the process for amending to add projects in the future? Because I feel like we just like keep amending it, adding projects, and then we change, the dates and the years. I just think, that's my feedback, is just to provide some more clarity on those processes. And then you said when you're trying to develop and pick projects, I really do feel that the policy for the technical TPAC should have a role in that as well. And I know that it goes through recommendation processes and all that. I just want to make sure that we are actually utilizing our own processes to pick projects, because in my time here, I have seen projects just come out of nowhere. And so I think that's just something that we need to be cognizant of, and that's my feedback for that. Okay. Thank you.
Well, if I could respond to that, typically projects don't come out of nowhere, because if it's a completely new project that is not in the plan, then that triggers a whole conformity process. And it has happened, and, we're in the middle of amending the plan right now, not because.
Use a different word, leapfrogging project.
Yeah, so.
They're in the plan, but they weren't scheduled to be funded, and then they get.
Exactly right. And that's part of the process, because priorities change. But that's why it's so important to do a really, really good job when we develop the project list for the long range plan, so that, we're not, bringing in projects that are not even in the plan. I mean, it could happen, right? But typically that's what we want to avoid. And because in practice, amending the plan to bring a new project in that triggers a conformity process, it's
Words.
Yeah.
My
Right.
concern is always projects that, you thought would get funded.
Right.
Got pushed back because of other, reasons. But
right. And I think in the last, since we adopted the last plan, projects that have been funded into the TIP, into the short term, really have been matching, for the great part. But of course, priorities change and some projects get accelerated and so on. But I think we are, especially for the local governments, we are, funding the projects that have been identified as the top priorities for the local governments in general terms. And so, yeah, I mean, it's never perfect, right? Sometimes, but we try to avoid the leapfrogging that you were saying. But again, priorities change, and those priorities are determined here by the board, right? So.
no, I understand that. And then the final comment I was going to say, I really think that we need to address AI. And I do see the MPO being a leader in that. And just as it relates to data points, so if we can incorporate that
Right.
as part of the priority, I think it's really critical that the MPO starts to take a careful look at it.
Absolutely. And again, since the MPO, we cover, the region, right, and multiple stakeholders and all that. So we have to be leading that and make sure that it's consistent and that we avoid, different agendas, different systems, different.
Thank you.
Well taken, Tim.
So just to follow up on some of Representative Hernandez's questions, it'll be really great to understand the criteria, but also timelines. So once we have the defined criteria, when is the MPO looking for local government to submit our projects? Because that helps us to be ready, coordinate with other departments, coordinate with the county that is needed so that we're really providing projects that are essential for our transportation network. Do you have timelines already provided of when that will be announced to TPB?
Yeah. Robbie, can you share again the timeline so we can give you an approximate time?
Yep. And we'll see.
So we'll give you, sort of like a time frame, right? But the reality is that your projects, whatever you have on your portfolio, I would encourage you to get them ready, right? And and you all, as the city of El Paso, start identifying which are your priority projects and making the case for what they are, just like you've done in the past.
Can you clarify, get them ready? What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, if you are, for example, are you doing some type of a feasibility study? If your projects are coming out of a feasibility study, maybe a quarter or a regional study, make sure that those projects are identified from where they are and why those projects are important, right? Because that again, that's when your project will be evaluated against other projects and in terms of the goals that we're saying. I mean, are they addressing safety, congestion relief, whatever it is. So Robbie, for the specifically for the call for projects and evaluation, when do we have that?
We don't have any specific month picked out yet, but we're thinking it'll occur like pretty soon in winter of 2025. So like early on in 2025. That's how we have it on our schedule.
And again, it's not a hard deadline. I'm sorry?
The specific criteria, what's the general timeline for that?
Pretty much the same time. So once we have the goals, identified and finalized and all that, then we can start breaking it down into objectives, and from there, determine the specific performance measures that will be part of the selection criteria.
Analish?
Thank you, Mayor. I think broadly the goals are good. I wanted to ask about the one titled enhanced resiliency. To me, in the context of a transportation network, resiliency means like system reliability, maintaining maximum uptime, withstanding large events, whether that's crashes or natural disaster, things like that. The image that's used is some plants and a tree. I don't know if this one is meant to be a call out for something like environmental sustainability. I do think that that's especially for, we're a county that's had, for quite a while now been in non-attainment status for ozone and PM10. I'd like to call that out. I don't know if that's something that can be added, even if it's on that same one, enhanced resiliency and environmental sustainability. I don't know if it was meant to capture that. I think it probably was. I'd like to call it out
I'm
specifically.
wondering if that image was generated with AI.
I wonder.
Robbie, do you want to?
Yeah. So when we're using enhanced resiliency, we're using the definition that aligns with the guidelines that were given from FHWA and USDOT. So you're right. It's capturing a lot. So it's capturing resilience against, extreme events, both natural and human-made, thinking about reducing and mitigating stormwater impacts, but also, you're right, and like these sustainability considerations, like reducing greenhouse gas emissions and promoting energy conservation. So it is one that captures them all, kind of both. The difference with reliability is more about providing that efficient transportation system and thinking about travel time reliability and congestion reduction. But you're right, they're very related. But the main reasons why we have them parsed out differently or separate goals is it's just to really align with those guidelines that we get from USDOT for how to prepare an MTP appropriately.
Okay. Is it something we could add on to enhance resiliency in the goals?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. That's why these are draft and we'll happy to take comments and advice, recommendations, in addition to what we're going to get from the public.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we have a motion to approve the draft.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3.
Thank you, Robbie. Okay,
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Mayor, we got a request late yesterday to delete item 3 of the agenda.
All right.
To delete?
A second, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion to delete item 3, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion barely carries.
All right, item 4 is to consider approval of amendments to the RMS 2050 MTP, amended RMS 2050 MTP, RMS 2025-2028 Transportation Improvement Program TIP for the Border Highway Connector PE phase, MPOID P 623A-PE /CN E 100-390 project to add $3,362,466 in state program funds and $5 million in USDOT Infrastructure for Rebuilding America Infra grant program funds for a total funded amount of $11,362,466 in 2025. We have Ann here with a brief update.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair and board members. If I could get these slides for this item, it should be, if you just scroll a little bit on that attachment, it should be the next item after the summary sheet. There we go. So this item concerns adding funds to an existing project, which is the PE phase only for the Border Highway Connector, which is an NMDOT project that spans from Highway 136 to 273, I believe. So as always, we start with an explanation of what the TIP is. It's our 4-year financially constrained plan. All of the projects in it have money associated with them. And when we make changes to this plan, we process amendments. If the amendments needed meet a certain threshold, we bring it before this body for your approval. In this case, because we are adding federal funds to a project that did not previously have federal funds, and that's the infra grant that they received, this does require a formal amendment in order to add that money. So this is adding existing funds to the PE phase for that project, which is ultimately going to be a 4-lane roadway. And so the ask today is for your approval to make those funding changes so that we can program it into our TIP and the New Mexico STIP. Next slide, please. So this is a little background about the project. It just shows the specifics of the financials that are requested to be added. This one's relatively simple and straightforward. That basically is all I've got. This went to TPAC 2, received an approval recommendation, and that concludes my presentation.
Any questions? Do we have a motion? Second. We have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ann. Item number 5.
Item 5, consider approval of amendments to the RMS 2050 MTP and RMS 2025-2028 TIP to program fiscal year 24-25 Federal Transit Administration FTA 5310 program funds as recommended by the FTA 5310 project call ad hoc committee. So A, program the Amistad 5310 program project with $361,200 in fiscal year 25 and $361,200 in fiscal year 2026. B, program the Microtrans Advance project with $238,000 in fiscal year 2026. C, program the fiscal year 25 Paratransit Service Software project with $280,000 in fiscal year 25. Program the fiscal year 26 Paratransit Service Software project with $280,000 in fiscal year 2026. And E, program the Rio Vista 5310 Transportation Program project with $149,659 in fiscal year 2025 and $60,659 in fiscal year 2026. And okay, so it'll be on.
All right. So for this particular item, the MPO hosts a project call every other year approximately for some FTA program funds that we directly administer. This is the 5310 program. This provides money specifically to projects that benefit veterans, individuals with disabilities, and seniors. There were 4 successful applicants, and the money that they are being awarded goes towards funding paratransit fleet and operations. So just, the buses and their drivers. And then in one case, software, which also counts as capital. So this slide gives a little bit of the information about how much money is available for each of the respective years. And then the awards recommendation was made. There was an application process, an ad hoc committee comprised of TPAC members was convened. They scored, ranked, and ultimately made the final selection, and then TPAC voted on the selection. And on the next slide, I believe we should see a little bit more information. Next slide, please. So this is a chart for the first year of award. This is going to be programmed in fiscal year 2025. So these were the successful applicants. And the strategy was to award all capital and then operating as remaining funding allowed. This program does prioritize the programming of capital because there's a floor for how much of the money that you have to spend on the capital and then a ceiling for how much you may spend on operations. So the program's priority is very much to make sure that we're getting people, things like buses. So this is showing who won the award, what for, and how much, and also what percentage of the overall total they were awarded. Next slide, please. Year 2, very similar with the one exception that we have SCRTD included for some capital funds. This slide shows staff recommendation, which is to approve the programming of these projects with these funds. And then the next slide will show TPAC's recommendation, which was to do the same. And this concludes my presentation.
There's a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries. Item number 6. Now, you said we have public comment on 6?
Yes.
How many people? 2? All righty, well.
Do you want to take them first, Mayor? Do you want to take the comment first? Or
Whatever you want. We're here to please you, sir.
well. All right, let me read the item into the agenda. Item 6 is consider providing a recommendation to the United States General Services Administration, GSA, on a preferred alternative for the draft environmental impact statement for the proposed modernization of the Bridge of the Americas Land Port of Entry Enhanced Feasibility Study. I'm sorry? Yeah. So I think, Mr. Chair, I think we will provide some background, some presentation, and then if it's okay, we'll take the public comment afterwards. All right, so in your backup, we provided the letter that was submitted that the board directed me to submit last month, where we were providing some corrections to the data that was included in the draft EIS, and also, among other things, requested that the public comment period for the EIS would be extended. So we submitted the letter, and GSA, as you all know, extended the comment period through December 1st. So it went from November 4th to December 1st. So it's rapidly approaching. Since then, we as MPO staff, we've been working with a GSA and CBP team to provide more information on traffic and air quality based on the alternatives that are being evaluated in the draft EIS. As a reminder, the draft EIS, when it came out in, I think it was late September, identified alternative 4 as the preferred alternative, right? It's preferred. It means that it's the front runner, and that's when they started the public comment period, so that everybody could comment on that alternative. Alternative 4 is the one that closes truck traffic to the Bridge of the Americas, and instead makes it a crossing only for private vehicles, adding a total, I think it's 35 lanes for private vehicles, but no trucks. I'm sorry?
Pedestrians.
And pedestrians, of course, right. So that's pretty much where we are. Since the comment period was extended, we are aware of a lot of comments that were provided, not only from stakeholders on this side of the border, but from the Mexican side as well. There was a letter that was provided by the city of Juarez, signed by the mayor, Cruz Perez Cuellar. We're aware also of a letter that was co-submitted by the Texas Association of Business, the Texas Trucking Association, Concamin, which is one of the chambers on the Mexican side, and Canacar, which is specifically the chamber for transportation and the trucking business. That letter had pretty strong language opposing that alternative 4. And we're also aware of a letter that TxDOT submitted, basically, raising concerns on moving truck traffic to the other existing ports of entry, especially the Isleta, Zaragoza port of entry, and so on. So that's sort of like background. Can we move on to the presentation?
Did you all finish your count study?
Well, we are in the process of finishing the counts that were very specifically southbound trucks at Bridge of the Americas. And we have 1 week worth of counts, and we feel pretty comfortable with that. The second week, we haven't received that, but I'd be very surprised if the second week of counts is very different from the first one, right? And I'm going to put Rafa on the spot, but we should be getting those. So the numbers that we have been working and developing are still in draft form, but they do show some patterns. So one of the concerns that we have in as an MPO is really what are the impacts on traffic and air quality at the regional level, right? So again, we've got 6 border crossings in our MPO region, and so we want to make sure that the impact to the region, or to understand what that impact is, right? Both on traffic and but more importantly on air quality. So can you move on to the next slide? So this is just a summary of the 3 or the 4 scenarios actually that we're running. So no action is really the no build, which is existing conditions, right? So those are the number of lanes that we have on the Bridge of the Americas today. So northbound, we have a total of 20, 14 for PO or private vehicles and 6 for cargo. And southbound, we have 3 for private vehicles and 1 for cargo. Next slide. Next. Those are the overall traffic numbers go back. The traffic numbers for that alternative. Then we go to alternative 1A, which is one of the ones that the GSA is looking at. And 1A has 2 options or 2 phases. Would be to begin with trucks. In other words, design the port of entry so that it could initially accommodate the trucks and private vehicles, and then in the future be able to reconfigure the port to convert the truck lanes or facilities into POVs. So we're analyzing them separately. So the first one with trucks would expand the capacity to 30 lanes, having 20 lanes for private vehicles and 10 lanes for cargo. And southbound, it would be 3 lanes for private vehicles and 2 lanes for trucks. So it adds capacity on both private vehicles and trucks. And you see there the layout, the proposed configuration of that alternative. Next slide. And again, those are the volumes, and we'll distribute this to you all. And by the way, I apologize for not having this ready, but this came to my inbox at 6:30 in the morning today. So we've been working overnight, and Jennifer, I think she got like 2 hours of sleep last night. So, but again, these are the numbers in draft preliminary form that we're going to be working and sharing with GSA and CBP. All right, next slide. Okay, so then this is the second part of alternative 1A. This is the configuration when trucks are pulled out. So now you would have 22 lanes for private vehicles, 0 lanes for trucks, and 12 lanes southbound for private vehicles and no trucks. Next slide. And again, traffic numbers that we can compare. Next.
Bless you.
Thank you.
All right, so then this is now alternative 4. This is the one that from day one eliminates truck traffic. So now you have 35 lanes for private vehicles, no lanes obviously for trucks. You would have 4 lanes southbound for private vehicles and 0 lanes for trucks. Next slide. And the corresponding traffic numbers. Next slide. All right, so this is, I think, the important slide where we're trying to compare the impact of the different alternatives, with a caveat that we are still working with CBP to come up with a good realistic scenario in terms of the number of booths, number of lanes that would be, realistically open, right? Because from a capacity perspective, it looks great. We're going to be adding on any of these alternatives a lot of new lanes, which is great, more capacity, but it's not going to help if CBP doesn't staff them, right? Which is, one of the issues and complaints that we've had, throughout the years, right? So there you see the comparison, and I apologize again. I just saw these this morning. So you see the number of lanes there for each of the alternatives, and what we have in terms of the assumptions for the staff booths that we have for each of the alternatives. The initial scenario that we ran, and that was included in the draft EIS and those numbers, assumed that all of the lanes, all of the booths would be operational, staffed, 100% all day, right? So, of course, 35 lanes in alternative 4, 24 hours a day, obviously is not a realistic thing. And the same for the other alternatives, right? So then we went back with CBP and GSA to say, well, we understand that's not a realistic scenario, right? But then what is realistic, right? So one of the next scenario that we ran, next slide, please, is a scenario that we're calling 80%, but basically this scenario says, well, what percentage of the total capacity are you operating today? In other words, if you have 14 lanes total, well, how many do you have in peak hour, and so on? So those percentages throughout the day were the ones that we applied to the different scenarios, right? But we feel that scenario is still not very realistic and achievable, because again, it's a It's a really, really big number of lanes. So the one that we ran last night is the one that you see in the bottom. And again, this we haven't really shared with CBP and GSA yet, but we feel that it's a little more realistic. Okay. So before we get into numbers and some of the conclusions or thoughts that we have as MPO staff, let me say that there are two elements that we are looking at here in terms of traffic and air quality. One is at the macro level. Okay, so we have our travel demand model in El Paso. We have a travel demand model in Ciudad Juarez, and that gives us information for traffic, like vehicle miles of travel and so on, and emissions at the macro level. So for each of the alternatives, what happens and how is traffic distributed or redistributed throughout the region and to the different crossings based on these alternatives, right? So there's a macro level. And then the second element is the micro level. So we have now the tools to do micro simulations of how each individual crossing performs, right? Based on inspection patterns that we got from CBP, based on counts. So we got, delays from that and all that. So at the micro level, we're able to get the information also for emissions. We have those tools to measure the emissions that result from all the queuing and the idling for trucks and private vehicles and so on. So we have the macro on both sides, and we have the micro, which is the connection. So we have a pretty complete picture of the impact on emissions. Now, like I was saying before, the micro really, really depends on how many inspection booths are open at a time, right? If you open all of them, like we did at the beginning, then it shows that there's absolutely no queuing, no congestion. But, I don't think it's realistic to assume that those 35 lanes are going to be open all the time, especially when there's, I think 10 or, correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, how many do we have open today at the Bridge of the Americas at peak hour?
Currently 11.
Right. So we're trying to, strike a balance. However, some of the things that we do see is that, especially when you look at the PM10 emissions, right, at the regional level, well, you see the numbers there at the bottom of each of the tables. You see that the numbers get worse with alternative 4 compared to the baseline and the other alternatives, and that is due because of how the trucks now are going to be redistributed going to the other border crossings, and on the El Paso side and on the Juarez side, and this is both for northbound and southbound. We still need to take a deeper dive on that, but it is of course that's something that makes sense, and our models are confirming that. So at the macro level, we feel that would be the case or the trend, right? At the micro level, you see that the 100% scenario, then we go to 80% scenario, and then something that is, I think, more realistic, which is what we're calling the 50% scenario, is a little more realistic, and again, it shows that 4 is the one that has the not by much, but more impact in terms of air quality. So this is what we're going to be sharing with CBP and GSA as part of the work that we're doing, in collaboration with them. But then, of course, as we participated with other groups and other committees and workshops and so on, we have heard a lot of concerns, especially from the Mexican side, in terms of the impact that shutting down truck traffic through alternative 4 would mean for the region. And of course, there's other comments about the impact to economic development, economic opportunities, the nearshoring phenomenon. We would be losing competitiveness against other regions, et cetera. So those are a lot of other comments that we have heard. So that's a really brief explanation. I don't know if you have any question for us, but the way that this item was written was to ask the board to, well, first of all, do you want to submit another letter with a more specific recommendation to GSA for which of the alternatives for them to pick? The answer is yes. Well, then which one? So happy to answer any questions on what I've presented so far.
The way you have it posted here, it looks like recommendation on preferred alternative, but also we need to provide, and that was one of the biggest things that we talked about, provide proper data for them.
Got a question.
Yes.
Is that what you put together, as you said, you just, I guess it was completed or provided in the morning. Is that something that is going to be provided to GSA regardless? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, I have a concern. This is a lot of information and I understand that you only received it very early this morning. But it makes me very uncomfortable when we're making decisions and not having all of the information that we could really try to understand before. So I'm not sure what we could do to remedy that. I understand there's an upcoming deadline, but it would have been very, very helpful to have been able to review this. I feel like we rushed through it in 5 minutes. And I understand that you just got it as well. And I'm sorry for whoever only got 2 hours. I'm so sorry. But it's something that just makes me uncomfortable having to make decisions when we don't have all of the information until right now.
Mr. Mayor Miller?
To your point, from the initialization of this, it seems like we've been told that. Even from the GSA and from their analysis and everything else, this whole process seems somehow incomplete because this document or the GSA document doesn't really speak to the rest of us. It speaks specifically to that crossing there. I'm kind of with you in that it's really hard to pick an alternative based on what we have, but there again, it's hard to go with a preferred alternative when I don't feel like they made I don't feel like this is a complete analysis of where we are. You're gonna have public comment.
So go ahead, finish.
It seems to me that the preferred alternative did not consider the region. It considered, and with no ill intent, it considered a specific region of El Paso and did not consider what it does to the rest of us. Does alternative 1 solve that? I'm not sure we could recommend that either because we don't really have the data on it. But then again, we're up against, this is our opportunity to say something. So maybe as an alternative, we say to them, you didn't give us enough information for us to make a recommendation on any of these alternatives. Therefore, please go back and do this again, would be our recommendation. Or something like that. I just don't feel like that we have enough stuff here. We have enough information.
Sure. We have Representative Hernandez and then you, sir.
I was just trying to better understand the metrics. And so I would, if I could just, like, let's say the PM10 emissions idling, could you define what's a good number and what's not? Because this is all like new to me. I don't understand.
Right, so idling refers to the micro. So each of the, for each of the crossings, but we're showing here for the aggregate. These are the emissions that result from, if you add up the emissions that are generated at each of the 6 crossings. just the crossings, right? Compared to the regional emissions, right? So that's why we add them up.
And so how do I understand the parameters of what is like an appropriate number for health and safety? So I see the numbers, but it's comparative to each other. So what is, is there like a best practice number that we should be gearing towards? Because, this is all relative to each other. So I don't understand. Oh, and in terms of the parameters, is the higher number bad or is the lower number bad? So I don't understand.
And that's a good point. What we're measuring there are emissions. And, we need to add the units, right? But more is worse, right? And again, we were focusing on PM10 because, PM10 is one of the pollutants that we are in non-attainment for. And so yeah, I mean, it makes it worse. Now, let me just say one more thing, that when GSA considers and does the analysis as part of the environmental impact statement, this is only one or two, traffic information and air quality of the items that they analyze, right? There's a lot more that goes into it, like more on the human environment and so on. So this, the selection of the alternative is not only based on this, right? There are other things. What I think is also very important is that for them to consider is that all of the public comment and the stakeholder comments that they're getting, especially from the from the Mexican government at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local level. So again, as we are providing this, as part of the analysis of the alternatives, again, specifically traffic and air quality, but it's certainly not the only two criteria that GSA is going to be using to make their decision.
And the other question I had is are like these levels for PM10, yes, it's a higher number, but is there a direct impact regionally to our attainment? And I think that's a question that should be posed, to say, alternative 4 would be detrimental to our PM10 when 10 points less is the current condition. So I just want to make sure that I fully understand the metrics. I fully understand the impact to the region, because I'm seeing numbers as well, as everyone's like, this is a lot of data. And I think it would be helpful if I saw this in a narrative format and what each point made and, what it means. But that's just my personal opinion. Thank you.
There you go.
There's a hand up. Pardon me? There's a hand up.
Yeah, we'll go with you. It just came up, so you're next, sir.
Okay. No, not that it matters or that I agree on it, but from the very beginning, our meeting with GSA, they were very blatant about the fact that they were not interested in the connectivity and they were interested in their footprint. And I think that's what we're gonna have to deal with consistently. It's like working with a railroad, they have this kind of attitude. And then they lean into the idea of having a discretionary, that it's a discretionary fund. And I know they push back a little bit on that. Rod has talked about that quite a bit. And so just to keep that in mind, they have not, we've had lots of meetings with them, and it's been based on what do which flavor do you want, but pick chocolate, kind of thing. And so I think that's whatever, like I said, whatever it matters is that I think we have to take that attitude and push back on it. But it's not gonna be easy as far as I'm concerned. I think they've got an idea of what they wanna do, and
Someone no longer. Representative Ordaz?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I'm in agreement with the group. I mean, this is a lot of information, and thank you so much for putting it together, because this has been the issue with GSA is we just haven't seen adequate data. And I'm agreeing with Mayor Miller here as well, as far as focusing on one region when we're trying to look at data for the entire region and what that looks like. I'm in the same boat, been hearing a lot of concerns on both sides on also both sides of the border, very concerned about alternative 4. Not having MPO's input, I think would be detrimental. Because this board speaks to the region, right? And I know you all worked really hard to extend that deadline. And I agree, they have one mindset. What is the likelihood of them maybe extending it just to ensure that we can have our own input? To not have the MPO input would, like I said, be detrimental, in my opinion. What do you think the likelihood of that is? To ensure that the board is able to process this information as best as we can.
Well, clearly I cannot speak for GSA, but my feeling is that they are really on the clock. So extending it further would probably be a difficult thing for them to do. That's, again,
2026, right? That's the plan to start everything would be in 2026.
well, yeah, but they need to do a lot of things, and especially with with the funding. What's really driving the clock is the funding, the appropriation, and the need to obligate the funds as soon as possible. So that is a real concern. So that's why I'm saying, again, I cannot speak for them, but I don't think that would be very likely. That's why we've been working, around the clock and try to get this information to them. But again, this work that we're doing here, we're focusing on two elements that are, important, of course, but they're not the only ones that should be driving the decision for GSA. Again, the concern from the industry, from the trucking industry, from the maquila industry, from the chambers, and some of the letters that I've seen that are coming from joint letters from both sides, right? Again, that I think should also be taken into consideration. I just returned. I attended the Border Trade Advisory Committee meeting in Austin this week, right, where we have representation from all the border regions, and there's the talk about nearshoring, the opportunities, and we have other regions thinking about new crossings and expanding the World Trade Bridge in Laredo. It's a monster of a crossing, right, and you adding capacity to other areas in the valley, and then of course they look at El Paso and here we are with a great opportunity where we are going in the opposite direction, right? So again, as a member of BTEC, that to me personally, and again I speak as your executive director, but I think I need to express those concerns as well on my end. This is my personal view.
Thank you. Mayor Cruz?
I just wanted to ask the board, is it the lack of info, or is it the way that the information is being portrayed right now? And if it's a lack of information, let's identify the information that we're seeking. Does more lanes mean less emissions? If we add more lanes, is CBP providing information stating that we can man these posts or we can't? We don't know what they look like on that. And so that was my question for us here today. Is it the lack of information? And if so, what is the lack of information that we're seeking? Or is it the way it's being portrayed right now? Because we can start numbers all day long, but we don't, I guess what we're looking at is what are the scenarios? Because there's alternatives, but what's the scenario look like and what's realistic? And that's my question. Thank you.
We'll do public comment now.
Okay.
We have 2 members.
Paul Dick?
Mr. Dip?
Dick, you'll have 3 minutes and it'll be timed by our attorney.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, everybody. Appreciate an opportunity to address this. the study that was done by the GSA indicates a 2% increase in environmental emissions, just to put that on the table. Recognizing the need for environmental and economic conditions is foremost in this. When we talked to the GSA, when I asked the person at the presentation on the GSA, there's not a word in the document that addresses any economic impact, unfortunately, in this study. I can, however, express that we are concerned about a master plan, but we'd like the master plan to include the bridges, the environmental study, the economic study, and the safety impact. The safety impact based on the movement of traffic and the movement of activity that's going to be diverted from this closure as a result of this closure, even on a short-term basis. I'm going to present something that may be a little radical to you, but I understand the need, the opportunity, and the desire to secure the funds and to improve the ports. I'd also like to say that I firmly believe there's billions of dollars at stake here on the economic side by the closure of the commercial traffic at these bridges, which includes the existing infrastructure that's been provided by TxDOT throughout the years that addresses the access points to Butterfield Trail, to the Northeast Industrial Park, and to the other parks that are surrounding this, including the area in Hawkins and that marketplace and that traffic. And yes, we do have commercial traffic downtown, but we need commercial traffic. Our company has been there since 1958, and we thrive on the opportunity to have consistent and reliable traffic. That bridge, which was created in 50 years ago, was designed for free market trade, and that's the purpose of it, and we hate to see that go away. And by the way, the cost of traffic and the cost of transportation will significantly increase. We're concerned about the cost of this project at $700 million and the inability to stage construction to maintain lanes both on the commercial and pedestrian side, commercial pedestrian and pedestrian traffic side. We don't understand why it all has to close all at one time when you have that level of investment. And we recognize the future of conflict of this, but in recommending number 1A, please understand that we could be back here 20 years from now arguing the same point. If this is going to be designed with 1A in mind and we're going to add lanes on the commercial side, we'd like to see that be without the option of converting that to pedestrian lanes, because the configuration and geography of our city is not going to change. The last point is Mexico infrastructure. They are not prepared for this, and I say that confidently based on my conversations with officials in the Mexican government and some meetings that we've had on the private sector. Thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Mr. Richard Dale. To you.
Thanks. Thank you. So nice to see you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Eduardo, thank you for this opportunity. It seems that everyone in our community agrees that we must modernize the BOTA and that it is an effort long overdue. It is the how we modernize it that is causing us so much concern and disagreement. I've been a businessman in El Paso for nearly 50 years and have watched our local economy and that of the region ebb and flow with policy changes made by our federal government during that time. During the 90s and early 2000s, we watched as many twin plant operations moved to the Pacific Rim, abandoning Mexico and the border regions, negatively impacting the economies of Ciudad Juarez and El Paso. Geopolitical policies and tensions helped to reverse those trends and bolster the relationships of the U.S., Canada, and Mexico through nearshoring. Our entire region and the economies of the U.S. and Mexico have benefited greatly and will continue to prosper if we make sound economic decisions to ensure the protection of these policies. It is essential that we modernize the BOTA in a way that supports the economic partnership with Mexico and utilizes the advanced technologies, including AI, to improve our ports of entry all along our border, to include Eslada, Bota, Tornillo, and of course, in New Mexico, Santa Teresa, working closely with Mexico to ensure infrastructure improvements on both sides of the border will support the future economic growth of the region. I provided the MPO staff with copies of our recommendations to the GSA, as well as emails sent to Congresswoman Escobar, Congressman Tony Gonzalez, and Senators Cruz and Cornyn, emphasizing the importance of a more pragmatic approach that will also improve the quality of lives for those living near all of our ports of entry. And I will add, listening to the comments made by the commission, particularly Walter and the judge, and Representative Hernandez, I would offer that we have little valuable information right now to make an informed decision. And it's frightening how quickly GSA is willing to move forward now without that information. We need to press them hard. This will affect our region and our economy for decades to come. Thank you for your time.
And I think it's, we have a huge opportunity right now to make sure that we can protect our neighborhoods. And we're talking about the Chamizal neighborhood, and we move it out to Isleta. We're not helping anybody. We're actually moving the problem from one end to the other. And there's got to be a way. We got $600 million to utilize to be able to not sacrifice the business world, but I think my priority today would be to make sure that we don't sacrifice the safety of two neighborhoods. You know, moving it from one to the other is not helping any. So going from, we're not going to do one, we're going to do four. Four has become very, I would say, toxic to another area. So we moved the toxic from one area to the other, and talking with, and some of the reports we were seeing, that we have about 12,000 children in the Isleta Port of Entry, and we have 15,000 children in the Chamizal Port of Entry. So we're taking and doubling the freight to this area and doubling the pollutants. That's not the real answer. And then now we're going to come in through here, I'm going to drive and continue to pollute, go back to the area because where the warehouses are, because these are only commuters, and then we're going to take them out and then come back in. So I agree with Commissioner Olguin that we haven't really looked at the data, and I'm really concerned that we're not protecting the safety of our neighborhoods. We do need to look at economic development, no doubt, but I'm really, really concerned that alternative 4 is just really worsening the problem, but in a different neighborhood. And that's something that I'm really concerned with based on that information. You and I sat down and we shared that we're going to end up roughly with 15,000 additional cars in Boda that will continue to pollute. So we take the trucks, double the pollution in Saragossa Bridge, and then now we're going to more than double the pollution because we got 34 lanes and adding 15,000 additional cars every day. So I think we got an opportunity and a lot of money to fix the problem, but I don't see the problem actually being addressed. Representative Canales.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not here to overly defend the GSA. They went through their process. But I do take some issue with hearing from folks that there's data isn't there. GSA put out their draft EIS. I'm looking at it now. It's 235 pages long. There's a lot of documentation of how they arrived at their process. 235 pages isn't it. It's backed up by 5 different bundlings of appendices, 976 pages, 714 pages, 532 pages, a short one, 24 pages, 294 pages. We're talking over 2,000 pages of data documentation backing up the decision that they arrived at. I'm not saying that it's perfect, that it encompasses all of the regional impact that we're looking at. But I don't like to hear folks saying GIS made this decision willy-nilly without data. It's all there on their website for everybody to see. Of course, 2,000 plus pages of data is not necessarily something that the general public is going to sit down and read. It took me a heck of a long time to go through and look through all of it. And I'll say too, not all of it is data, right? Some of this is the letters that they've received and, it details their public outreach and all kinds of things. But I just didn't like hearing that there's no data. Perhaps we can say that if it's a fair statement to say the data that we wanted wasn't necessarily there. There's quite a lot of it there. And then, Mr. Calvo, you mentioned a lot of letters that you've seen. There were two that I didn't hear. That is, there was a letter of support unanimously approved by the City Council for Alternative 4, and a letter of support unanimously approved by the County Commissioners Court also for Alternative 4. And so I just want to make sure for the record that those ones are noted as well. There were also separate letters of support from the two local representatives of the area of Boda, myself, and I'll say three, because myself, on the other side of the port, Representative Josh Acevedo from the El Paso City Council, and Commissioner David Stout from the County Commissioners Court. So those are other letters that, I know the discussion was particularly about letters on the other side, letters of opposition or in support of one of the other alternatives, but I wanted to make sure that for the record, those ones were noted as well. Because of, and I know it's only one of the areas that this decision has an impact on, but the folks representing the people who live in the immediate area of Boda did have, at least in the most local levels of government, unanimous support for the GSA's preferred alternative. Obviously, we're a different body than the City Council and the County Commissioners Court, but I did want to note that those local levels of government did provide their support, and both did so unanimously. I definitely think it's appropriate if we have, especially some additional modeling that the MPO has done. It's a large effort. It's appropriate, I think, totally, if we want to share that new information with the GSA. I think if we do so, we should share with them something more in depth than this, much more information about our modeling, the inputs, the assumptions that were used in the modeling, a much broader look at this data than just the summary here. But I don't know that necessarily, based on just seeing this, that this board can, in an informed way, take a position in favor or against either of the alternatives. This definitely adds to the conversation, but I don't know that it's enough to make a decision on. So I think in that way, I agree with some of the colleagues who have spoken before. So that's where I stand on this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, and I don't disagree with you at all on that they have the data. The only thing that's really concerning is the data that they used from the MPO was not accurate data, and it was not used properly. And that's the only thing that's concerning, that they did have the data, but it didn't seem like the data was used. And you can maybe pitch in a little bit in this, Eduardo.
Yeah, but I mean, I certainly don't, I don't think those mistakes or whatever were done on purpose or anything. There's part of it is because, again, there's such a time pressure. And when they finally came to us and requested that information, it was, we've been working around the clock on this. So yeah, we felt that it was important to correct the data that we provided that we felt it wasn't, correctly included in the draft EIS. And we've been working with them and not only correcting that, but also improving the data, improving the modeling, all of the analysis and all that. But again, the models are, we don't have a crystal ball, right? The models are, there's still a lot of data that goes into them and all that. We feel fairly comfortable at the macro level, but we still need to work with CBP to maybe improve the level at the micro level, at the bridge, which a lot of it is driven by the number of booths. But in the conversations that we've had in general, we felt that when you consider the entire thing, not just looking at the traffic and the air quality side, But when you consider all of the different, factors and the comments that we receive from stakeholders and what we hear, and also looking at the opportunities in terms of nearshoring and all that, 1A seems to be a very good compromise in terms of allowing us to do this because and you've heard me say this several times, is that at this point, we do not have any specific projects to improve our ports, right? There's ideas, there's, concepts. The projects that we have are more like canopies on the bridges and so on, but a real plan to improve, the mobility, the cross-border mobility of people, vehicles, trucks, and everything, that's what we're lacking. We don't have that. And 1A gives us the opportunity buys us some time, right? So that we can work on this bigger plan. And if with the goal of eventually taking trucks out of downtown, because again, I think everybody agrees that in principle, nobody wants to see trucks in downtown Juarez or downtown El Paso. But it buys us some time so that we can figure out, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to really take them to the bookends? Santa Teresa to the west, make improvements to Isleta Zaragoza, and in the meantime, buys us time to build the infrastructure that is needed so that Tornillo, works better, right? I think we all realize that right now the trip to go down to Tornillo 30 miles and back up to where the warehouses are, it has a tremendous impact on the trucking industry, and that's what we see in our models as well. So anyway, so that was just more thoughts of the discussion that we've had at the staff level with other agencies and other people that we work with.
Is there any motion? I'm sorry, Representative Ortega.
I don't want to repeat everything that was said at the last meeting, but we did meet with GSA, and the senator kind of gave a summary of the information that they were providing us, and it basically left us that there was still a lot of unanswered questions as to the way they approached this, what they had looked at, what they had studied, and we were very concerned about what we were learning. And I think that several of the remarks that have been made here today kind of displays the concerns that we had. And I've got to agree with what was just said, because if we go to alternative 4, I mean, that's basically agreeing with them when they haven't really done the work that they should have done to fully look into the region as to how it would affect the region. Because I don't believe that they did, based on the responses that we were getting from them. Unfortunately, they're going to make a decision, and they're the ones that are going to be deciding it. I mean, we asked, like, who ultimately will you base this decision on? And they said, well, we'll take into account as to what's said in the comments, but they may ignore all of the comments that are made, and they will decide what to do. But I think it's important for the MPO to actually go and firmly tell them. For instance, there could be a letter stating, we don't think that there's been adequate studies done in certain things, but I would recommend that we go with alternative 1, because it's not saying that in the future they're not going to remove commercial lanes. It's just saying that they're going to work on it. And what we're hearing from TxDOT, State TxDOT, that sent a letter, was the other ports aren't even ready to take commercial traffic. And now what we're seeing from the information, and thank you for putting that information together, is that it's kind of supporting what was thought in the past, that it was going to create more pollution, rather than what they're proposing and they should be looking at is mitigation. And that was one of the things that we asked them. Well, is there consideration to mitigate the environmental factors that are taking place at this bridge? And there was really a lot of no answers to the questions that we were asking. And unfortunately, we are having to make that decision, and we need to take a position. And I mean, I would move that we recommend alternative 1 and let them know that if this could be delayed, it would be better if there was more information that was being provided. But with the information that we have, which is lacking, and based on what has been put together by the MPO's office, that we support alternative 1A at this stage.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
If I could, I
Welcome
think,
to the board, by the way, sir.
thank you. I think we need to be very careful how we answer with our recommendation, because if the board feels that we don't have adequate information and they didn't put the information together, that needs to be stated. And then we need to say, based upon the information, I dovetail off of what you said, ma'am, is the information that you gave us, based upon the information that you gave us, because it's lacking, we can only come up with this recommendation based upon what you gave us. Not that we're in full concurrence of either one of the options that you gave us, but because the information is lacking, you give us no choice but to give a recommendation, whichever one it is, because of the information that you gave us. So we're not giving full endorsement to any one, but we're by default giving an endorsement to one because of the information that you gave us.
I'll have a hard time going with one, to be honest with you, because I still don't believe that we're taking the safety of the community at hand, and that really bothers me a lot.
And I say that, Mayor, because no recommendation is a recommendation.
No, I get that, and that's why we have some additional information. But anyway, do we have a motion and a second? Motion and a second, so we're gonna take the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. So we're gonna do a hand count. All in favor? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Are you up, sir? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So motion passes. 12 to 6.
On to the next item?
Pardon me?
Next item.
Next item?
We'll go next item.
All right.
Item 7.
All right, item 7 is to consider adoption of the El Paso MPO policy documents. A, planning document development outreach standard operating procedure, and B, outreach policy for providers of public transportation. And Harrison Plord has a brief presentation here.
I think we just lost quorum.
Were we?
Present, and then we got discussion.
Sure. So good morning, board members. This item is related to the MPO staff's response to our most recent federal certification review, some of the requests that came out of that. Next slide. So we received the report on our 2022 federal certification review earlier this year, in July of this year. We were certified for, following procedures as required as an MPO at the federal level. But it did include 2 corrective actions. And the federal partners gave us 180 days to respond to those actions and make the correction. Next slide. So the first corrective action is listed here. Essentially, this was a 3-way planning agreement that was missing. We had an agreement with Sun Metro that is kind of a parallel agreement, but we were missing one with South Central Regional Transit District, the other main public transportation operator in the region. So we did draft and get approval from the board for that agreement, and it was executed on August 20th. So this corrective action is resolved. Next slide. So the second corrective action is written here. And essentially, the guidance that we received from the federal partners on this one was that while we conduct the involvement process with all of the stakeholders and regional entities appropriately, we don't document it as well as we should. So we need to be better about making those processes transparent for the public at large and for all of the entities. Basically, we do things really well, but we need to brag about it more. So that's what we're trying to do with these two policy documents, is get in writing the processes that we already follow for involving all of the entities and the public and stakeholders in the process of creating our documents and carrying out the regional transportation planning process as a whole. Next slide. So the first of these is the planning document development outreach standard operating procedure. And both of these documents were included in your backup. This one is a pretty detailed look into the process of developing the MTP and the TIP and all of the outreach that we do, the steps that we take, and all of the engagement points that we make throughout the process of developing those two documents. Next. And the second one is the outreach policy for providers of public transportation. This one is a bit more broad, and really it's kind of an overview policy that is in place then relates to those individual agreements that we have with the public transportation providers. But again, the point for both of these is that we get down in writing and have something to point to for when we are questioned about what process do you undertake with the public? How do you involve all of the stakeholders and all of the entities when you're going through that regional process? Next. So the staff recommendation is to adopt the policies as provided in the backup. TPAC also is making that recommendation. They reviewed this at their meeting last week. And that's all I have for the presentation. If you have any questions, I can respond to those.
All right, what's the recommendation?
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion is second to approve as submitted. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. This is the last action item, and I need to step out, and I'm gonna, with the board's approval, have Mr. Miller take over. Can I get a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Motion is second to allow Mr. Miller to take over. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, moving on to reports and discussion. Item number 8, presentation on Rider 7 project history. We have Claudia Valles from MPO staff, who's been consistently the project manager for most of the work that we have been doing. So if you're ready, Claudia, go ahead. I think you're muted, Claudia. We still cannot hear you, Claudia.
Presentation? Can you hear me?
Just hold.
Item A, and it's part of a.
There we go. We can see it now.
Okay. So good morning, Claudia Valles, El Paso MPO. So we're going to go to the Rider 7 program. The Rider 7 program was formerly Rider A and originated in 1995 with $500,000 in order to support local air planning activities to in areas not designated as entertainment areas. Right now, as we remember, El Paso MPO is right now as closed, but it's already like as attainment. So for the moment, we continue with this grant. In case that we go to non-attainment again, we will be lost in the grant for the next fiscal year, that will be 2026. I want to mention that. The activities that can be used these funds are identifying, inventory, and monitoring of pollution levels, and modeling pollution levels, identification, quantification, and implementation of appropriate locally enforcement pollution reduction controls strategies, and can be through some interlocal agreements or contracts. Usually, we work with UTEP, TTI locally, also TTI in College Station, the division that help us always with the emissions assessment for the conformity. And now we start also working with Urban Sim that they gave us last week training. So it's one of the more common contractors that we bring to help us with our projects. And the grant recipient has to try to use this fund, for more useful for the state implementation plan SIP. And the last years of EPMPO has been working on projects to help with emission inventories locally in El Paso, the international border crossings, and in the border neighbor city, Ciudad Juarez. Right now is what we're focused more to help to have a better understanding of our neighbor city, Ciudad Juarez, to have a more validate and accurate model to help us with some scenarios planning. So actually right now for this grant also, we have two projects. We have the border emission estimator for micro simulation, the BEAM tool, and the sketching tool for regional emission assessment stream, and we are making enhancements to them. So we're updating the emission rates for El Paso, but also we are creating some emission rates for Ciudad Juarez, because right now for all the scenarios that we test, we are assuming that both emission rates are different, but as we know, the vehicles in Juarez tend to pollute more because of the age. So right now is what Texas A&M, the Transportation Institute, is helping us to do. The other project that we have is the impact of transborder urban growth policies and patterns on ozone concentration in El Paso, Juarez Binational Region. This project is very complex, so we have better entities that are helping with us. Right now, Texas TTI locally is helping us to purchase cameras that will be used in Ciudad Juarez for vehicle counts. Then we just have a contract through UTEP with IMIP, that is the Instituto Municipal de Investigación y Planeación in Ciudad Juarez. They will be helping us to collocate these cameras for almost 3 to 4 months in 150 locations, intersections. The focus, the main point of this is that we can have vehicle counts and we can have a more accurate or network that we have for Ciudad Juarez. As we already know, we have an ITDM, but Ciudad Juarez part needs to be more accurate and with better counts and emission rates. We'll have better numbers. So on the period before, that was 2022 to 2023, the projects was the international border crossing emissions. This was divided on 2 phases. The first one was the phase 1, development of IBC emission tools. This was developed for TTI. They developed the BEAM tool. That is the one as Eduardo presented in item 6. We have this tool that help us now to analyze micro level. So our staff member, Jennifer, is the expert there in Transmodeler. She go and try to model our bridges or international border crossings. And then with this tool that was developed by TTI, we can have the emissions specific for that bridge, and we can test different scenarios. And the second phase in 2022 and 23 was to test different scenarios by UTEP. This is where we found her and bring it to MPO. The second project was developed by Urban Sim. This was in order to develop the land use transportation model to estimate urban develop and travel patterns with different scenarios of desertification policies. And right now, as I mentioned, we're going to start with some scenarios in Ciudad Juárez, and Urban Sim will be helping us with that. Next slide. So unfortunately, on 2022 to 2021 was a shortening of the grant. So in this year, we were only able to do one project that was the enhancement to the transportation air quality sketching planning tool. This tool has been helped us a lot with a macro level emission analysis, and also we are able to help us on the conformity process. So sometimes when we have small mistakes, instead of going and make our process that will take months, probably a year, the HWA is happy with the results that this tool is having, as the error is less than 10%. So they allow us to run this emission and see that the difference will not be so much in case that was a mistake in our network. So this tool has been very, very useful, and is why since 2016 that we start with this tool, we have been enhanced. So every time, as we know, EPA has new models. First was mobile, then it's moves. Right now we are moves 4, so every time this has to be updated. So the emissions rates change, so we have to be updating every 2 years our tool. So TTI is the one helping us with that. And next slide. So since last year, the ADA Texas Legislature expand the Rider 7 program to include a new separate program for areas at risk of being unattainment for particle matter 2.5. The amount was 2.5 million for quality plannings to reduce the PM2.5 in affected counties that are not designated as an attainment for the NACs. The funds are limited to inventory emissions, monitoring of pollution levels, air pollution and data analysis, modeling pollution levels, and administration of the program. And the same as with ozone, we have to try to find projects that are most useful for the city. For the contract between El Paso MPO and TCQ, this one, the amount was $158,000 with $634. So our first project with this grant, can we pass to the next slide? Is the monitoring of PM2.5 exposure from traffic congestion and international border crossings. So as we can see here in the image, we are going to be analyzing in the Bogota port of entry and in Santa Teresa. We are going to collocate these monitors. Will be one in the sidewalk, will be northbound or southbound, so we can see the pedestrians, what is the amount that they are breathing. Also on the agents that are in the booths, they will have monitors that will be collocated in their clothes, so we can know exactly how much they are breathing. And in the middle, we will have a monitor that will give us the emissions that the vehicles that are there are emitting. And also we will try to correlate this also with the ambient, like wind patterns, the heat. So it's why we have in green, that will be in the middle, our ambient monitor. So we can conclude that the tools and studies developed by El Paso MPO using the Rider 7 and 8 program have been used for the conformity process and analysis of scenarios, and other agencies can make use of the emission assessment tool for research and model studies, as for example, on the item 6. We are able to go and help other entities with some analysis of scenarios that they needed. And also we provide to some other consultants when they need to make analysis. We are teaching them how to use the ITDM that was developed by EPMPO. Next one. So we can observe on the following tables the background history of the tools used by El Paso MPO. So as I previously mentioned, the stream tool that assesses the original emission started in 2016 and has been improved through the grant and is very useful for scenarios analysis and help us through the conformity process. Next one, we start with the beam, that was the micro level, and as we see already, they're helping us to evaluate all the scenarios right now on the border crossings, but also we can go and make another intersection and go and evaluate and know the emissions that it's producing. So also that can be used. It's not limited to only the border crossing. You can create any micro simulation on the software and will give you the emissions. And the last one is the urban sim. Urban sim was the land use model and scenarios developed as last year, and now it's under the addition of the Mexican neighbor city, Ciudad Juárez. So I don't know, we have questions about these projects?
Are there any questions from anyone?
And also to remember, all this money all these projects have been paid by TCQ on the Rider 7. It's not El Paso MPO money.
Yeah. And Mr. Chair, if I could add to that, I mean, that is really, really one of the coolest things that you see a lot of the work that we developed through the Rider 7 program, you see it in action because that's what we're doing. We're using our models to test these, the work that we're doing with the GSA. So it's been done in pieces, but we are finally now able to put everything together. It's not perfect. We still need to automate a lot of the steps, but the fact that that we've been able to take advantage of somebody else paying for this work, and it's it's for good reasons, right? I mean, TCEQ is the air quality, the environmental, but air quality agency at the state level, and so it fits the objective of the Rider 7 program, and we've been able to really take advantage to develop some really, really cool tools. So we're very proud of that. All right. Well, thank you, Claudia. All right, let's move on to item 9, project call announcements for TxDOT statewide transportation alternative set-aside TASA program and New Mexico DOT Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP, Recreational Trails, RTP, Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, CMAQ, and Carbon Reduction Program, CRP. Here's Ann.
Good morning once again. This is just to let everybody know that we have a project call about to open in each state on very similar subject matter. In both states, the Transportation Alternatives Program, in Texas it's TASA, in New Mexico it's TAP. They are both about to open and receive applications for their next funding cycle. In New Mexico, this is combined with some other programs that aim to achieve a similar objective. The New Mexico deadline for draft applications is January of 2025. In Texas, that is when the statewide TASA project call opens, with their applications being due in February. In your backup, there are live active links. I just tested them that will allow you to reach the information page from each of the respective DOTs with more information about these programs. Both have some fairly comprehensive information to those who are interested. And we just wanted to let this board know, and especially let everyone know in time to put something together. In both cases, these are going to prioritize non-motorized transportation type opportunities. And that is all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Eduardo, it's your turn.
All right, so the executive director's report, very briefly. Item A, the El Paso Region Binational Connectivity Workshop. This was hosted by TxDOT. God, it seems it was ages ago with all the stuff that's going on. That workshop, TxDOT provided updates on the follow-up studies that they're doing after the border master plan. Several with, the first and last mile, then inter-region connectivity and so on. It was a really, really good workshop. Of course, a lot of the comments that were received there from the stakeholders on the Mexican side had to do with the Bridge of the Americas at the time. But in general, in terms of understanding the connectivity issues that we have on both sides of the border was really good. So that was very helpful. Second, the Foreign Trade Zone Summit. I was invited to participate in a panel called the Regional Outlook Panel. It was a lot of fun. It was a great event that the FTZ put out. And so a lot of really good information about that. And hopefully, we can participate as an MPO more with the FTZ. They do a lot of really good work. And then CMD, both happened on Tuesday of this week, Border Trade Advisory Committee. Commissioner Holguin and I, as members of the El Paso region, and of course, Tomas attended as well as the district engineer for El Paso. A lot of really good discussion, again, on border trade, right? A lot of hot topics related to the near-shoring, multi-shoring, poly-shoring, whatever we call everything shoring, and how we're going to be preparing for that. TxDOT also provided some updates on the next version of the border master plan that's going to be kicking off pretty soon. And then at the Freight Advisory Committee meeting, Miriam Katkowski is the member, but I was there as a in a case that there was some questions for El Paso, but it was also a pretty good meeting talking about freight issues, the update to the freight plan and the rail plan and so on. A lot of good information. And then finally, just wanted to give a shout out to the State of the County that happened last night. Judge, that was a great show, and congratulations. I mean, it was a lot of fun, and it's very good to hear all the good things that are going on with the county, and all of us participating with that, and the county being a very, very important stakeholder and player here at the MPO. We certainly appreciate it. Just wanted to congratulate you on that.
On behalf of Commissioner Guinness, thank you.
And that's all I have.
Move to adjourn.
Do we have a quorum?
Do we have quorum? I don't think we have quorum. So we can
Stay here forever.
All right. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thank you very much. Marisol.